The Gospel of Luke is the only gospel that recounts this story of Zacchaeus. But it is a powerful story and one that forms the basis for our time together today. The scripture for today is taken from the 19th chapter of Luke, the 1st through the 9th verse. As Luke tells the story, Jesus was going through Jericho where a man named Zacchaeus lived. He was in charge of collecting taxes and was very rich. Jesus was heading his way, and Zacchaeus wanted to see what Jesus was like. But Zacchaeus was a short man and could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree. When Jesus got there, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down out of the tree. I want to stay with you today." Zacchaeus came quickly out of the tree and gladly welcomed Jesus to his home. Everyone in the crowd who saw this started grumbling, "This man Zacchaeus is a sinner, and Jesus is going home to eat with him." Later that day, after having spent time with Jesus, Zacchaeus said to Jesus, "I will give half of my property to the poor, and I will now pay back 4 times as much to everyone I have cheated." Jesus then said to Zacchaeus, "Today salvation has come to you and your household." May those of us who have ears to hear the message inherent in this scripture. Amen. Let me give you a little historic background here. Zacchaeus was Jewish. He was a Hebrew. He was the son of Abraham. But Zacchaeus was considered by the Jewish community a traitor, because Zacchaeus, like all tax collectors in that time, worked for the government of Rome. The taxes he was collecting were taxes for Rome, not taxes that were designed to help the people of his community or of his country. These were taxes that went straight to Rome. Rome was an occupying power. The Jews were not a free people. They were under the power of Rome. And they resented that. They were hostile to that. So Zacchaeus was seen as someone who had sold out to the Roman Empire and was taking money from his own hometown people and his own regional people and sending it off to Rome so that Rome could enjoy the benefits of their occupation. What is more, Zacchaeus, like many tax collectors, was very rich, because there was a lot of corruption in the government. Can you imagine that, corruption in the government? Jericho was on the trade routes of Rome, and one of the trading items that was going on there that was quite lucrative was balsam. And there were a lot of payoffs going on. So Zacchaeus in that time, like all tax collectors, was receiving a lot of under-the-table money. And so he was getting rich not only from collecting the taxes, but by allowing people to pass through without paying the taxes. He was allowing traders to come through and bribe him. There was a lot that was going on that made Zacchaeus a bad guy. The people knew this. They didn't like Zacchaeus. So they not only saw him as a traitor, they saw him as a crook. Evidently, Zacchaeus, according to Luke, had heard about this rabbi, Jesus, who was doing some interesting teaching about how we ought to be with one another, and he wanted to see, as Luke says, that what this Jesus was like. Now Zacchaeus was not a tall man, he was short. Something with which I sort of identify. And he said, but he was smart. And he figured, I can't see over the crowd, but I can climb up a sycamore tree. Remember that from Sunday school class? Zacchaeus and the sycamore tree? Yeah, I can climb up to the sycamore tree and I can be above the crowd and see Jesus as he comes by, because I know the route. He's going to come right by this tree, and I'll be up in the tree and I'll get to see Jesus and listen to him and see what he has to say. Now, evidently, it was just intended to be a momentary experience. I've heard about this Jesus, kind of interesting, the crowds are interested in him. I'll go hear what he's like, and then I'll go back to cheating the people and collecting the taxes and getting right under the table money. Much to Zacchaeus' surprise, Jesus looks up into the tree, calls him by name, and says, Zacchaeus, come down out of the tree. I'm going to spend the day at your house. Now, this is something like a rock star coming through, because the crowds around Jesus were all followers of Jesus. And so Zacchaeus comes down out of the tree quickly and takes Jesus to his home. Now, the first thing that happens in the story is all the good followers of Jesus, the ones who are trailing Jesus as he's going around preaching, the ones who think that he's wonderful, the ones who think that everything Jesus has to say is just absolutely wonderful to hear, get upset. Like, wait a minute. I'm a follower of Jesus. This guy's a creep. He's a crook. Jesus wants to spend the day at his house? And so the first thing they're upset about is Jesus. Why would Jesus want to spend time with a sinner like this? So it makes you wonder about, has the crowd really been listening? Because their idea is, we're the good guys, people like Zacchaeus are the bad guys. We've got it neatly divided between those of us who are good and those of us who are bad, and Jesus throws us a curveball, and Jesus is going to spend time with one of the bad guys, not just to visit for a few minutes and sign an autograph. We're going to go spend the day at your house. So the first question that the story really raises is, has the crowd who's been following Jesus really paid attention to what he's saying? Something the church really needs to ask themselves continually. Are we really paying attention to what's being said? Or have we drifted into this mindset that says, we're the good guys, after all, we're in church. And they're the bad guys. And as long as we're the good guys, everything's fine. That's the first point of the story. Second point of the story is, evidently, Zacchaeus, who is a smart guy, is enjoying this other intelligent person, Jesus of Nazareth, and they're talking all day long. Now, we don't know what they talked about. The story doesn't give us any details as to what happened in Zacchaeus' home. But we know what the result is. At the end, Zacchaeus says to Jesus, I will give half of my property to the poor. Now, this is Zacchaeus who's all about the money, who's all about making money, who's all about getting rich, who has no empathy for the poor at all. As a matter of fact, doesn't mind taking from his own neighbors in order to make himself rich in the service of Rome. And at the end of a day of conversations with Jesus, he announces, I will give half of my property, 50%, to the poor. And I will give 4 times as much to everyone I have cheated. It's a 400% return on how I've cheated you. Now, just historical note. Under both Jewish law and Roman law, anytime someone has cheated another person, the law required that they give 4 times as much back. So he's just obeying the law there. But still, 4 times as much is still 4 times as much. Half his property, that's something else. So whatever Jesus said to him and whatever he heard, in effect, transformed Zacchaeus' approach to life. Now that's all we know about Zacchaeus. That's all we know about Zacchaeus. Now, there are church traditions that say Zacchaeus actually became a bishop of the church, and that Zacchaeus became the first bishop. I think it was Constantinople or something like that. I think I'm wrong about that. Clement of Alexandria taught of Alexandria. That's what it is. He was the first bishop of Alexandria. We don't know that to be true at all. According to Scripture, we don't know anything else about Zacchaeus. That's where the story is. And it's interesting that no other gospel writer even thought to write the story. So you wonder, where did this story come from, and what sources were used, and why around the year 90, which is 60 years after the death of Jesus, Luke includes this story about Zacchaeus. Well, I think Luke includes the story because it's a story of transformation. Or if you will, it's a story of salvation, because what does Jesus say to Zacchaeus? Once Zacchaeus announces, I will give half my property to the poor, and I will give 4 times as much as I've cheated the people back to them. Jesus says to him, today salvation has come to you and to your household. Salvation. So transformation in this story leads to salvation. Now, those of us who have grown up in the church know that salvation is a big deal. Most of us who've grown up in the church know that the 2 great categories were sin and salvation. And I think those of us who are older at least know what it was like to live your life with someone walking up to you and asking the question, are you saved? Have you experienced salvation? I never knew what that meant because I didn't know what they meant by it. And all my answers were so weird to them that they didn't know what to do with it. But it's like, do you believe in God? Are you saved? Is Jesus your Lord and Savior? As if everyone knows what all that means, and everyone means exactly the same thing, which is absolutely not true, because it's a unique individual experience of precious, unique individuals. But anyway, we knew one thing for sure, that sin and salvation were the big deals. And that when you broke the rules and you did bad things, you were a sinner, and when you believed the right things, you were saved. You had salvation. And I want us to rethink that for a moment, because I think the story of Zacchaeus really helps us with that. What actually happens to Zacchaeus? His whole perspective on life, his whole priorities and orientation to life are transformed to a new set of priorities and a new set of insights. Insight, looking in at himself. And whatever happened to Zacchaeus in that discussion with Jesus, we know that he looked into himself and saw things there that he changed. That there was more to life than just making money. There was more to life than just getting away with cheating people for your own benefit. There was more to life than being deceptive and illegal and lying just so that you can profit. There was more to life than getting rich at the expense of others. And that there was meaning in life to be found in another way of being. Hence, Jesus has been called the Way. And that way of being has to do with generosity, has to do with justice, has to do with truthfulness, has to do with integrity. And that whatever happened to Zacchaeus, he moved from being a man who lacked integrity to a man who gained integrity. He moved from being a man who was selfish to being a man who was generous. He moved from a man who was unjust and a cheater to a man who was more just and honorable. people began to matter to him. The people he had cheated mattered to him. The people he had cheated deserved repayment from him. The money he had earned at the expense of others suddenly was better used, given as a gift to the poor, than simply buying things for himself. There was a transformation in thought, a transformation in orientation, a transformation in the way that he looked at life and his way of being. Now that's because he, maybe better than the people who were following Jesus on the road, listened and heard and was transformed. Now what have we said in this progressive church of ours about sin? Sin is missing the point of life. And many of us keep reminding you that the word sin comes from archery. When the archer misses the target, the archer sins. Sins to the right, sins to the left, sins high, sins low. He sins. Sin means missing the point. Zacchaeus, like so many of us, has often missed the point of life. And in his encounter with Jesus, he gets the point and is transformed. So he moves from sin, missing the point, to salvation. Salvation has come to your house this day. Now, what does salvation mean? Now, when I was a kid growing up, salvation meant I'm going to heaven instead of to hell. And I'm going to be with the angels and walk the streets of gold or wherever they were, and I'm not going to be burning in hell with the never-ending fires. A pretty crude and inaccurate view of things according to Jesus. The truth of the matter is that the word salvation comes from the Latin salvus. Now, have none of you ever put a salve, S-A-L-V-E, on a wound? Salvus is that which heals. And so salvation is the experience of being healed. And so we go from missing the point to being healed, from being broken to being whole. So we move from sin, I'm not understanding a way of being that is the Jesus way of being, to salvus. I am healed with a new understanding of life, with a new way of looking at life. So Jesus becomes for Zacchaeus the way and the truth and the life. That now is the way and the truth and the life that is Zacchaeus. If we are to be a truly progressive congregation, we must continually do the hard work of looking at the stories that are our tradition, written in the first century, and be able to translate those so that they can be heard in the 21st century. The message is clear. If you pursue things that are designed to feed your own greed, if you pursue things that are unjust, if you pursue things that are unhealthy, then you have sinned, missed the point of life. And if you pursue things that are grounded in gratitude, that are grounded in graciousness, that are grounded in generosity, then you will have been healed. You will find salvus. And you will have discovered a new way of being, a new truth of life, and a new way of living out your life, as did Zacchaeus. Now, we live in a time when it doesn't take much to see people with great responsibility and power who stand in need of the transformation Zacchaeus experienced. And it would be interesting to me if this became the kind of basic story for our view of our contemporary situation. How much are we as individuals, and how much are we as a country pursuing policies and a way of being that says, what's in it for me? How much are we pursuing policies that lack integrity? How much are we pursuing policies that lack graciousness? How much are we pursuing policies that lack generosity? How much are we cheating others for our own gain? And how much are we not caring about others for our own gain? Not just as individuals, but we're a community. And as a community, we're part of a nation. As part of a nation, we're part of a global community. What if we said, as a country, for example, well, every time we've done something that was for our benefit at the cost of another nation, we'll give half of what we had back to them, or we'll restore what we've taken times 4. Just as a policy. You know? And when we see the poor, we'll give half of what we have to them, because we have enough. That's when Christians get nervous. Say, well, yeah, I know Jesus said that, and I know Zacchaeus moved that way, but we're not going to use this as an example, for goodness sake, because, you know, what Zacchaeus can do, that's asking too much. I mean, I can imagine going home today and sitting down with my wife Ann and saying, you know, I was doing this sermon on Zacchaeus, and I decided it'd be a good idea for us to take half of what we have and give it to the poor. And let's check out that there's no one that we've really not treated well, and let's pay them 4 times what we may have owed them. Maybe someone didn't bill us and we didn't pay because they forgot to bill us. Well, let's go back and remind them they forgot to bill us and pay them times 4. She would say, what do you guys do at that church? See, we can talk the talk. And I'm not saying you have to do the mathematical formula this way. I'm just saying, these are messages that call us into question. These are messages that make us stop and think. These are stories that have profound truths in them. And the changelessness of the truth stays constant and meaningful and fulfilling for our lives, whether it's the first century or the 21st. And that's the point. So let us hear the message. Really hear it. Let us listen to it. Let us respond to it. Because the transformation that was Zacchaeus is the transformation that can be who we are. The salvus, the healing that was Zacchaeus, can be the healing of who we are. The graciousness and the generosity that was Zacchaeus can be the graciousness and the generosity that we are. Because if we have heard the message, then we stop missing the point. And we start finding the way, the truth,